Hi, how are you?
Pretty good, yeah.
Good, good. Glad to see you again.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Glad to see you too.
yeah. Looks like we've got a nice group of people here. Sadena, Samantha, Brian, Angela, Jesse. So, all right. Welcome to the meeting. Hope everyone's doing well. Um, so, I don't know if people want to give updates right away or. Got a slight echo too. I don't know.
I would say that I also am experimenting with another recording style. So I don't think this one will interrupt, but
Okay.
it does actually. So that it's recording today on the top. So
Yeah.
but yeah, we can start with updates. Let's get to have some folks here. Yeah.
So who wants to go first? How about Angela, since she hasn't been with us in a while?
Well, but I have been not doing sciencey stuff. I have been learning the extremely hard language of German most of this whole time. And I'm pretty sure I just passed my orientations test today, so that's why I'm back.
Good.
I don't have, career/science related news.
Well, congratulations on that. And I know you're studying in Germany, so you have to learn German to proficiency.
Yeah, I mean, I have to learn German either way because I live here now. But yeah.
Well, great.
You said that you're doing more grad stuff, or I didn't understand.
I have to get in first. I'm in the third round, so things are different in Europe. Like, I'm glad because apparently you need like a master's to get a PhD, but PhD here is only 3 years, which is a lot better than the 6 years. It's literally half of the 6 years that's expected in the U.S., right? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And what are you aiming towards, or what do you want to do, or?
Network and social systems engineering is going to be what the diploma says. My mentor would be someone in sociology. Yeah, so.
Oh. That's what one of my friends wanted to do a few years ago, but then they got accepted to a program like that, and then they decided to not do their PhD at all.
Oh,
so
really?
I hope they get Yeah.
Wait, do I know this
Good
person?
luck.
Like, why did she decide against it, by any chance?
It was the he, so maybe you don't know them, but I don't really know. They kind of changed. They're very particular about the graduate school things, and I'll say who, but I won't say right now necessarily. But their life. What they were doing was always they ended up doing a passion of theirs, so it wasn't like they totally abandoned them what they wanted, but it was just like they made. I remember them going through the application process, and they were very fussy about who they wanted to work with, and they happened to get into that program someplace in California, and then they like went to the other side of the world and did the other stuff, and I don't really know what they're doing now, so it's kind of a mystery to me, to be honest.
Yeah.
Well, that's great. Keep us posted.
Hey, it's great to see you, though. Yeah.
Okay. Who wants to go next? Well, Samantha or Brian, I guess.
Or Samantha. But I have a similar update to Angela, so it'll be very quick. Which is that I've been having to work a lot and haven't been able to do as much science, which has been very sad.
Yeah.
And finals are up for university right now, so that's a big.
Yeah.
But life is good, and I'm glad to be here.
Oh, good. Yeah, welcome. Glad to hear people are, just kind of working along, and sometimes, like I said, some weeks are more productive than others, so don't let that discourage you. But Samantha now.
Okay, so this week I did the EHC research showcase. So I got to present my research project for the semester on artificial intelligence automating jobs in healthcare. And I think it went really well this week, this Thursday. I saw a lot of other cool artificial intelligence related projects, and I talked to someone who is actually working on empathy with like a concentration in like racism in technology, which I thought was like really cool to like talk to different people who had different perspectives on artificial intelligence and how it affects our lives. But other than that, this week, that was like my main focus this week, trying to get through that because it was my first really big presentation in front of like a room of people. And I think I did pretty well. And thank you for all the feedback on my poster and my presentation. Yeah, that's my update.
You're welcome. Yeah. Yeah, that was very good. Jesse and I both gave comments on her poster. It looked pretty good. It was very a lot of information, but it was very good, very well laid out. So yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I don't know if
yeah.
you wanted to say more about that later or show your poster later, but you're welcome to do that, Sam. But it's great. Also, for Angela's sake, you might know this because of being around. You're in Slack. You check in and do things there and say hi and stuff there. But Sadena, Samantha, and Brian are all UAlbany interns. For like this is our first batch of like official interns.
Oh my gosh, congrats!
Yeah, and actually, like, they've all kind of come through the whole journey so far. So it was actually really cool. We had it in the works for a long time with UAlbany. It finally happened this like semester as the first actual batch. So it's really cool. And also, Amanda is an intern as well. Although Amanda has been around the block a bit more in different ways. So I guess Amanda's an intern, but it's great to have Amanda here as well. We'll talk more about that stuff later too. But yeah, definitely. I'm really happy. I'm very happy that the intern program has gone the way it has, and I know everybody's had a lot of it's finals and a lot of things are going on, and the showcase that Samantha said I presented at that a few years ago myself, like the informatics version of that, and it's cool to see. Like, it's a really nice sort of continuity for me, but it's nice to have all the experiences and see what people are doing now, and or even if you want to say more later about that, the person you had the someone who's doing the empathy work too, Sam, that would be cool. Or like if they have a specific contact. Do you know if it was like like an undergraduate student in a course, or were they having like a specific advisor when they were doing it?
I think it was an undergraduate student who's doing a class that I'm supposed to be taking next semester. It was like the informatics senior seminar. I don't know if you've ever heard
Capstone or something? Yeah, okay, cool. We'll check in with that later too. But that's all really cool. So. Okay. Hey, Simon. Yeah.
Hi. To be fair, I also have a similar update to both Angela and Brian, where it's like the finals. I was also at like another research conference last week for UAlbany, so that was really well. Like that went really well too. But it was just like hectic trying to get things together for that. So I haven't been too sciencey for that matter.
Yeah.
But hoping like after finals and like once like the hectic dies down just a little, like it's gonna be nice to like get back on the rails.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think this is I think this is not news to anyone, and I won't speak for Bradley, although I will a little bit here. In the sense of like, we totally understand that it's finals time, and there's no like. I'm happy that you guys even showed up because I understand that very much. So no pressure in that sense at all. But great to see people here. And anybody wants to talk about there are other research efforts or things that you present or like term papers, you're welcome to do that, either like informally or do a fuller presentation or flash talk. Just, as always.
Yeah. And Amanda, did you have anything? I know you might not be able to talk. You could probably type if you want.
I don't think she could hear you.
Oh yeah, okay.
Yeah, she just said she can't hear anything.
Oh yeah. I wasn't reading that like I should have been. Oh well, when she comes back. Yeah. I think we're having trouble with her connection, but I'll just wait till she comes back. And anyway, in any case, so why don't I don't know if Jesse had anything he wanted to update us on, and then we'll wait.
Who is that? Amanda?
Yeah, that's Amanda.
Okay, is this else? Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. My updates. Well, I don't have a lot of cool things to say. I mean, we'll talk a little bit about the Cognition Futures reading group and things later, which I'm really happy that that's going well. I've spent a lot of my spare bandwidth this week on some kind of administrative / organizational stuff. I am working to better manage some of my projects, and I have to I'm creating sort of my own. I'm not making my own like major organization. I'm making a small banner under which I can group some other projects, and that's taken some effort on my part. But between that and I have one of my own grad school deadline things that's sort of approaching, and it's mostly been a week of a lot of logistics and like admin stuff, like boring admin stuff. We did, and we will show them later. We did get some of the pictures back from the Celebration of Women in Computing. For those who don't know, Angela was the person who's behind the data trust segment of that portion. So that was really cool as well. And Amaris, I don't think Amaris is here, and Brian, and Aaron, who I don't think will be here today either. But I think that's our main crew. I know Bradly presented on that stuff, and I think that's the main folks. But we got some pictures back from it, which we'll probably show later today. Brian posted one in general, which is great. So I know there's stuff happening with Google Summer of Code. I'm anxiously awaiting, like, I will be a mentor with that. So I'm kind of, you get in the Google Summer Code mailing list as a mentor, and you just get all sorts of stuff thrown at you from, like, you have this, like, all these potential things that are happening. There's discussions between other mentors, and I'm very much only engaged in it so much. There's that. There's NeuroMatch. The NeuroMatch deadline happened, and then I think they've extended it also until May 6th. So there's a lot of these like external things that are kind of in flux, but it's mostly just been a plowing ahead week for myself, and that's good. I always have. I continue to have discussions with Avery, and the book club. The reading group hasn't yet worked out for them, but we're talking about a variety of things, and I'm kind of acting as their ambassador at times. So more about that later, but that's pretty much it update wise. I'm starting to think a little bit. This is for a little bit of a preview for like the future stuff. We have the Google Summer Code coming up. We have NeuroMatch in the summer, but also like we'll have another. Nobody has to say now, but just to um, administratively comment on it. Like, some of our interns may only be able to stay for spring, and may not. We might have senior people joining in the summer as well, and so thinking about that and thinking about summer plans for people who want to do and what projects you want to focus on and that kind of stuff. So nobody has to say anything now, but in the next couple of weeks, if you could let us know kind of what your plans are for either staying on, which you're absolutely welcome to do. There's no, there's no deadline on our end. I don't think anybody currently here is like restricted in it or tied to academic credit through Albany in terms of the spring semester. There are opportunities to do that in the fall, or excuse me, in the summer and fall if you are interested in that. So for the UAlbany intern specifically, just let us know what your plans are about that, or if you want to get into. If you particularly want to get credit for something, or if you ever need like a letter recommendation, or if you need like anything in terms of like I know Ankit, I think Ankit mentioned they wanted a specific certificate related to their internship completion or something like that, or their affiliation with the lab. And if you're going into interviews or talking to the lab, or you want stuff to show what you've done, like just know that that's something you can always ask about. So that's kind of it on my end. And again, more about summer plans in the next couple of weeks for everybody. But that's all that I have to say for now. Anything you wanted to say for yourself, Bradly?
Not really. We'll have to talk more about some of the summer plans coming up. So we have NeuroMatch Academy. What was that? What were you going to say?
As far as I can tell, and I'm a little bit. It's very likely. I think it will still be happening. If anyone is in the Midwest or wants to be in the Midwest around Chicago towards the end of June, and I think particularly the first week of July, there will be an orthogonal research and education lab collection of sorts happening in Chicago. So people are welcome to join that. The details are still in the works, but the date is set, and the date is approaching. It's almost May. And then May will be June. And, like once you get in the research and academic time, it's like applications and deadlines are always months out, and then they don't feel like it, and then you miss stuff. So,
Right.
basically, we might be meeting in Chicago in a couple of weeks, in a month or so, month to 2 months, really, I guess.
About 2 months, yeah.
But to be determined.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, that sounds like a nice.
But that's.
Yeah, we'll see how that goes. We'll have to make plans for that. Looking forward to that. And so, thank you for that. But yeah, we have things like NeuroMatch and Google Summer of Code. I don't know how many people here applying to NeuroMatch, but we have, they have the summer school, they have deep learning, and they have computational neuroscience. But they also have the curriculum up on the web, so anyone can actually go through these lessons. It's open, it's free, and you can do something what they call a slow pod. And this is something Jesse wanted to do at one time with some colleagues of his, is to go through the materials at a much slower pace. So normally it's 2 weeks. He wanted to have a session where people go over it over the course of maybe a couple months. So I have we have a curriculum in the lab, and I've talked about it in previous meetings, where we have all these resources that basically give you expertise in different areas. So this is one of those areas in, I guess it would be both deep learning and computational neuroscience. You can go through the lessons, or you can enroll for the course. If you enroll for the course, you get a formal certification and you get credit. But that's up to people in the group what they want to do. So we'll be talking more about that over the summer. I happen to be a mentor for a couple of the projects. I'm not really sure what the projects are going to be yet, but this is a great opportunity to learn. And then we might do some special events surrounding NeuroMatch this summer as well. Another thing we want to do this summer is we'll have the Google Summer of Code program. And if you're not selected, I still want to invite people to be part of that work and work on their proposals that they submitted. And so one of the things that we're going to do this summer is we're going to talk about open source data and open source community data. And I want to, get a working group together on this because I have a few more people who are interested in this outside of this group. And I want to go over maybe like some of the details of how to get the data, how to work with it, what kinds of analysis you can use, and so forth. As it turns out, it's actually a pretty deep area. I was surprised at how, people are doing work in it. People published papers, but there's a lot of practical stuff you can do. We can walk through a data analysis. We can get data. There are a lot of data privacy issues as well, because you have, people in your community. You don't want to. On the one hand, you want to advertise who's doing what, and there's this whole thing in a lot of groups where they like to point to the star performers and say that they're doing this great work. But on the other hand, there are also things you don't want to have, like certain data sets. You don't want to share certain things. So we'll go over some of those issues as well. That's going to be coming up this summer. And then we're going to have a physical meetup this summer. We had a physical meetup in the UK, I think last year. Jesse and I were recounting all the different meetups that we've had.
We're 2 for 2 in terms of 2021 and 2022, and that's pretty I don't think there's been many real in-person meetups of the lab. The lab's always been distributed and online and virtual.
Yeah.
For those who don't know, it's always been that way way before the pandemic ever was a thing. So Bradley's foresight and masterful execution of that has always been in place. But we have some. This is like a lab dad joke, and I'm just going to make it. We have had such a digital experience, but now we're having some analog IRL physical experiences as well. And there's different aspects of those things that are accurately mapped, and some are not accurately mapped across each other. And now we're having a little bit more of this kind of stuff. Amanda just missed my digital analog dad joke, but I'll that I'm going to follow up so that Amanda gets it later, because Amanda and I have a lot. We keep this. There's something that Amanda did, but then I can't let it go because I keep thinking about digital analog stuff all the time now. So you have that dad joke and you have to over-explain it. So I just want to really make sure that I get it right. So also, I don't know if Amanda, she's in and out too much. Yeah. Just give an update right now. But
well, you know what makes a dad joke, right?
What?
It's apparent.
What's that?
Ha ha ha! That was so bad. Why am I laughing?
Brian's had the unique joy of going to a conference with me, and I think someone at the conference said, "Oh, that's your last name." I wasn't sure if they were letting people in as parents now and giving them specific name tags for it. You're a presenter? Oh, okay, great. That's cool. I was like, yeah, that's right. Yeah. So there you go. Now we can have more of those experiences too, where we have share those important ones. So thank you for that.
You both have very dad jokey names. Like McCorkle sounds like a dad joke name. Parent is obviously a dad name.
Yes. So.
Yeah.
That's how it goes.
So that's
away.
That's great. Yeah. So, and then of course we met up at New York Celebration of Women in Computing. That was actually more of a hybrid event. So we had, so
Yeah.
that's something we might work on in the future, trying to maybe organize, physical meetups and hybrid meetups in different ways. I think that'll be a little bit richer in terms of what we're doing. We can go to different locations in the world, or yeah, that would be great. It's a little difficult to
and
do.
thanks again, everybody. Kind of like we had a lot of different approaches to that, and the recordings, and some in-person stuff, and some in between, and it was a bit of a learning experience in some ways. But it went it went well. And you couldn't. I wish we had more pictures of like the room or like beforehand or the audience, but the audience was pretty much a full room. There was, and people stayed through the end, and we didn't have a lot of time for questions, but it went over pretty well, I would say. So good job for everybody in that sense.
Yeah.
And yeah, more of those to come for sure. I did like the idea of trying to get like as much stuff recorded ahead of time. I think makes it smoother. So more about that to come, but it went well. And hopefully we can meet up in late this summer as well, and then we could have more than one in-person meeting a year, which I think like that would be record-breaking in many ways. So we'll see.
Yeah, that's great. So I'm gonna, I guess, switch gears here. I wanted to talk about a couple things. I'm gonna share my screen here. So the first thing I wanted to point out was that we have our blog for the lab, and we have a number of posts here. You can see that we have different people contributing. We have Jesse, Ankit, and myself have been the contributors so far. And again, I know some of you are looking to publish blog posts, as sort of a part of your experience. So, this is basically where it's going to be published. It's a Medium blog. You have, we just have like a quick name or oral notes. It's just notes from the lab. This is the latest post here, and this has to do with our Cognition Futures reading group. So some of you were able to make that. I think Jesse and Amanda were able to make it, and I know Brian hasn't been able to make it. We've had some inquiries as to what this is about, and so this blog post will tell you exactly what it's about. This is our first week, so we had, the first week we had just kind of an introduction to the readings. We have some base readings that we started with, and then we go from the base readings to discussion. So we've had some really interesting discussions on like tying in. It was basically the initial discussion was on neurophenomenology and a book called On Becoming Aware. So that book is about awareness and consciousness, and it's from a philosophical standpoint. So, there's a certain perspective there. But then we kind of branched off in a number of directions, and we did a number of things here where we talked about cybernetics. We talked about what they call the 4 E's, which are embodiment, embeddedness, inactivity, and externalization. So externalization is that extended cognition. Inactive is like being active in the world, and how your cognition and your experience are shaped by interactions with the world. Embedded is that you're embedded in the world. You can't separate the brain from the body, or the body from the environment. And then embodiment is, of course, the brain and the body. So brains don't exist in jars, they exist in bodies. So those are the 4 E's. And so we've...
I think I might need to change that, because I think it should be just extended straight up as opposed to externalized. But It's pretty much the same thing.
Yeah. Yeah, so then, we talked about empirical methods to sort of probe first-person experience, then talked about the book a little bit, and about experimental testing. So then Jesse put this nice set of, I don't know if that needs to be, I guess
this is some of the quotes
yeah.
from our are readings that I just pulled from a couple selectings from the article and then the front matter of the book, basically.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah.
Yeah. So this gives. Yeah. So this gives, I think, a nice overview of it, and we're going to do another one maybe for next week or this past week or combine them. The point is that we want to summarize these different. These different events, or if you're interested in like a topic, we have a topical let me find a topical one. Well, I guess we had one from Ankit on highlights from the NeuroMatch 4 conference. So NeuroMatch 4 was in, I think, last December. Yeah, it was in December, and Ankit found on, I think, 12 talks that he really thought were great. And so he put a list together. He took from the recording, he took the screenshots, and put them into the blog post here, describing a little bit about each talk with a link to the talk. And so that's how a blog post works. So if you want to do this, what you have to do is you have to create your own Medium account, and you just start, and you have to. I believe you just start your own Medium account, and then you create the post, and then you submit it to the Orthogonal Research and Education Lab, which is, I think, a process you can go in and search for, and then we get a notification, and we'll do some editing on it and put it up. So that's, if you're interested in doing a blog post, you can see that it's fairly easy, fairly straightforward. There's a lot of, there's a lot of work. It's probably a good several hour block where you have to write it out, and you should probably outline it first, and then put it together. A lot of images helps, links help because that's the medium, and then that'll be a nice little piece of work. You can have it up there in perpetuity, I guess.
Yeah. And for those who haven't done it before, or first time, or interns, or any at any point, it's absolutely okay, and maybe even encouraged if you want to put it in the in you don't have to put it in slide, but still let Bradly see it, or you can mention it to me too, and we can offer advice, or if you have if you're unsure about how to deal with that, or you have questions, like just very much a process. And we as we always say, it's great, deliverables are great, but kind of keeping momentum towards stuff and being interested in kind of keeping moving in the same direction is the really important thing too. So a lot of people have mentioned they're interested in doing blog articles, and that's great. But also, I would just really, really, really strongly encourage, don't feel like this is something that I did. I did this, and I was encouraged otherwise, and now I try to do I try to do with my advice as much as possible. Don't wait until you have a perfect, pristine, finished final project to share it, or to say, hey, Bradly, here's what I'm working on. Don't feel like it has to be totally perfect before you do that, because that I understand the temptation, and I think part of like getting messy into research is realizing that it doesn't necessarily work that way, or like that creates, it actually takes longer if you wait really long to be perfect. Overall, it tends to be kind of like it's better to be iterative and to have like communications, because the mentor and sometimes we don't even know what it's like to have a mentor, because people might not have experiences with mentoring or being open about writing and stuff like that too. So like I'm very aware of that too. So maybe get different experience altogether to have someone you can ask in that way, particularly about a public or a blog, thing like that. But you can do it, and just for people who want to do that, feel free to show us wherever you're at in the process, and it'll be a good thing to do that. Yeah. So it just came to my mind, something to say about that too.
Yeah.
And welcome back for real, Amanda.
It's like she's here.
Yeah, I'm sorry about that.
Did you want to give?
Yeah, I can give an update. I hope it wasn't like making noise every time I chimed in and out. I tried to work at a shop, and they their Wi-Fi was only selectively working. So now I'm at the cocktail bar that I work at, using their Wi-Fi. I don't have much of an update since what I wrote in the chat yesterday. I've been enjoying the Cognition Futures reading group. I need to finish organizing my thoughts in that Google Doc that I started. What else? I started reading another book, despite having not finished 3 other books that I had started. But it's been good. Thompson's Mind in Life. There's a lot of biology. Interesting. Yeah, I've been doing well, despite being very discombobulated right now.
That's good. Thanks for the update. Yeah. So I know, we were talking about that group a little bit, and I think that's great. I think it's great to have a side group that we're doing more focused things in, exploring some topics. And again, if you want to join in, that's great. We have a lot of different. It's kind of we start from a common place and then we grow tentacles out from that, and we kind of explore different topics. One of the topics that we talked about in the group was this idea of cybernetics and the third order cybernetics, sort of going from the first order and then upward. So you have second, third, and fourth order, I guess. And some of those are, I think a lot of the orders are based on this idea of observers and the role of observers. From the best I can tell, it's first order is sort of an impartial diagram, describing regulation. And then second, third, and fourth are basically different, levels of experience or experiential involvement in that. So you have observers, and then you have, interactions between observers and the system. And then, so it's like that embodiment aspect of it. You become embodied in the system. So I think that's an interesting topic, actually. I don't know. I don't really have a lot more to say about it, but I don't know if Jesse or Amanda have any thoughts on that.
Well, I'll since I literally have the page open already, like a big old nerd, I'll mention the cybernetics thing I was going to say. Something else.
Something tight.
Is this going to work? Oh, it is working today. How about that? So I happen to be looking at the cybernetics page, which is actually really good. I have looked at this page many times over the last 7 years, I think. And when I first looked at this page, I'm like, I feel like I'm, it's one of those things that you look at over time and slowly understand the references more and more and more, because I think everybody here kind of gets that about some things. So I was looking specifically at, I want to talk to, I keep wanting to mention this specifically about Angela knows Jenny, but this stuff too, the designing schools of design and societal design. But there was a specific one, the split from artificial intelligence. This is such a small little thing, but it's a really interesting. I feel like this could be an entire article in Wikipedia, or like a whole lot of things here. But it says, AI was founded in this as a distinct discipline in the Dartmouth 56 workshop. This is after some uneasy coexistence, which I feel like that would be awesome to be unpacked significantly. AI gained funding and prominence, which, as we know in research, is a big thing. And then there's the AI winters and the AI specific dominance or hegemonies of like symbolic and now deep learning and how that changed. Consequently, cybernetic sciences such as the study of, which is almost wild for me to say this, cybernetic sciences such as the study of artificial neural networks were downplayed. The discipline shifted into the world of social sciences and therapy. So, looking at this citation, it's like, you know, I want to read this too. The movements coexisted for roughly a decade, but by the mid-60s, the proponents of symbolic AI gained control of national funding conduits and ruthlessly, which is probably true, ruthlessly defunded cybernetics research. This effectively liquidated the subfields of self-organizing systems, neural networks, what are those, and adaptive machines, evolutionary programming, biological computation, and bionics for several decades, leaving the workers in management, therapy, and social sciences to carry the torch. I think, I don't know who is this saying, but I think some of our polemics with pushing and shoving between first-order control theorists and second-order crowds that I witnessed in subsequent decades was the cumulative result of a shift in funding, membership, and research that the hard natural sciences to soft socio-psychological interventions. And so I actually never read this part of this before. I jumped, you can see I opened this link, but this is the link I just put in Cognition Futures chat, or Slack, and it looks really interesting. I can't tell if it's like a whole. I guess it's an article in a poem. I guess it is. And I guess this person is an extended review of a collection of essays.
It's a journal. It's an online journal. Yeah.
Yeah, but like what the article is a review article about another thing.
Oh, okay.
Right?
Yeah. Oh, it's probably like a book.
Some meta,
yeah. Yeah, it's a book review, I guess.
An extended review, blah, 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 blah. So, anyway, I'm curious about that. I've been looking into, first and second order and what that really means, and my understanding of that man has changed a lot. And the last thing I'll say is, the reading group is really fun so far because we spend like half the time going over the material, and then mostly it's been a lot of people tolerating my freestyle weird ideas, so I appreciate that. But we have these like really interesting off-piece and tangents, and that's fun to have space for that. It's a little bit less formal than this group, but also like not really. It's kind of the same thing. It's just more a little bit more specified than our big broad updates for the whole organization. Also, I realized I'm wearing my Envision shirt.
I actually have to go now.
Okay, well, it's great to see you, though.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks for attending. So, yeah.
Envision is a thread that ties Angela, Avery, myself, and it's sort of it's also the last conference I was at in the before times. Like Envision 2019 was sort of epic thing. That has at least, I don't think they've done an Envision this year. I can understand why, but there was this talk about an Envision discussion series in April.
Right.
I have to check in with them. I want to like, I'm a huge Envision hype man, fanboy, whatever it is. So, but I don't think they're doing it this year, unfortunately. Anyway,
Brian had something in the chat.
Yeah.
He said about your, I guess, well, it looks like it's all a quote from Peter Cariani, I think the thing that you were showing.
Yeah, and then I actually looked at his website, and he's got a bunch of papers on there about cybernetics and neural nets and a lot about music, so I'm going to check out that guy.
Uh-oh.
Yeah. Common interests. All right. Yeah, so why don't we go... we haven't done this in a while. Why don't we go over our Slack channels and see what's new in there. I'll share my screen again. So, I'm sure all of you are aware of our Slack at this point. We have a lot of channels, and sometimes it gets overwhelming as to what is in the channels and what people are posting. So sometimes we used to go through this more often, but we wanted to kind of shift to other things, and we always like to there's so much to do and we only have so much time. So this is a picture of Brian and Jesse this is the red chair. This is the iconic red chair of the New York Celebration of Women in Computing. So they were in person. So that's very good. If I don't think this applies to anyone in this group, maybe Jesse, but if people are interested in being TAs for NeuroMatch Academy 2022, we have they're looking for people to be TAs in this. So this is not like be a person in the course in one of the pods, but this is like a teaching assistant. So this is, I don't know who in the lab would be suited for this, but if you are, or if you know someone who is, let them know. It's basically 2 weeks of work. You get a $1,500 payment, and then you get, you have your group and you work with them virtually over the course of the 2 weeks. So it's, it's an experience, teaching assistant experience. Looks like
It's a lot of, it's a very intense 2 weeks, but it's great to do. Also, I believe, there's always kind of a need for volunteers. So if you don't feel like if you don't want to be a TA, you don't feel comfortable with that, you can help out in a lot of different ways. So if you like the idea, and it feels really tough. I feel like NeuroMatch, there's a paper. We have a very cool paper that I think Bradly and I are co-authors on.
Yeah.
That was about the first ever effort of it. But I feel like I imagine that I know there are like the coursework videos, but I feel like it would be cool to show like a general video of what NeuroMatch is, because people who haven't experienced it before, it's a very cool, novel thing. And I don't know if they're doing it this year or not, but I think Rashad was a TA or wanted to be a TA last year. Do you remember if he did that, Bradly? I
don't remember, but I know a couple people have expressed interest in this. So,
and I know Ankit might have done it or may try to do it also. So there's definitely history there, and any questions, please reach out to us about that.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's something. But I think you pretty much have to have attended one of these or been like an alumni would be ideal for this. But in any case, so then there's this thread that happened where we talked about this student competition paper at ALife 2022. So we did get the reviews back for ALife 2022, and I'll talk about that in a minute. But this is the ALife 2020. So this is a conference, an artificial life conference that is being held in Europe, but it's also virtual. This is an abstract and essay student competition. So this is something that the professional organization that runs ALife puts out. And students from any discipline are welcome to submit original essays. Graduate and undergraduate students, you can have your conference registration fee waiver. You have a waiver of your registration fee if you're participating in this. So that's incentive enough. Students are invited to write a submission for up to 2 pages, consisting of either a short essay on the theme of this year's conference, so you have to know what this is here, and evolution for the improvement of real lives. So they have the topics over here, and then, or B, an extended abstract, 2 pages max, on a practical project aimed to contribute to the development of the artificial life community. So they have this encyclopedia of artificial life, which is sort of like a Wikipedia effort to cover topics in the field of artificial life. So this is something that they want to encourage people to work on. So basically it would be some sort of 2-page article on some topic in artificial life, or something about the theme of the conference. I would pick the latter, personally. So this Encyclopedia of Artificial Life is run by the professional conference, and you can see it looks like a Wikipedia page. So they have, these different stubs on, evolutionary robotics, artificial ecologies. Then they have things like YouTube videos and books, digital evolution. Then they have software platforms. So they cover different software platforms that exist for simulating living systems. And then they have these subcategories, which are these topical stubs. And so, we'll take like soft artificial life. And so this is an article here that was written in November 2021. And it opens up to this article on its cellular automata. This one's cellular automata. I don't know why it went over to the cellular automata topic, but it basically describes different classes of cellular automata: discrete, hybrid, continuous, and then has some video links and some references, just like a Wikipedia page. So this is something that you can do, and we might actually want to do some of this for the cybernetics work, because we have in the past, we have in our GitHub repository, we have a set of stubs on different topics in cybernetics. And so we do have a cybernetics project that sort of hasn't really been active much, but we want to kind of characterize cybernetics and work with it. So we might actually do this as an activity where we write these stubs on different topics and publish them out like that. But in this competition here, for the purposes of this competition, you have all these different topics you can write on. So you can write on, it ranges from hardcore digital chemistry, so simulating chemical reactions, computational biology, dynamical systems, and then you get to something like artificial life-based art, or philosophy of mind and science, language evolution, artificial society. So it ranges from like social science and some of the humanities to physical science and natural science, and even robotics, which is of course an area that is of great interest because people want to evolve robots or robot controllers that allow robots to do really interesting things. So that's all kind of food for thought. I know that we had in this conversation, a lot of people said they were interested. So if people want to find out what the deadline is, submit something, you're welcome to do it. I just wanted to bring this up for people. And then if you're interested in doing something, say with cybernetics, we can put something, we can sort of rekindle this. It's not really a wiki right now. It could be a wiki because you can build wikis in GitHub. But to sort of revitalize this idea of having a directory for cybernetics, and having our own sort of topics of interest embedded in there. So, but we can talk about that more later. So that's the general channel. Then we've had some conversations in some of these other channels. There's Brain Organoids, which has been somewhat dormant as of late. We have a number of nice papers in here and images. I know a lot of people here aren't really interested in this area too much, but we have been talking about working on brain organoids, which are these model systems that originate from stem cells or from some other type of precursor cell, and they're basically little organs. So people built organoids of like livers and hearts and kidneys and even brains. So brain organoids are neural systems that are built according to this thing. So they put a bunch of precursor cells in a dish or on a scaffold in a 3D culture chamber. So they're doing cell culture, they're growing cells, and when you have them in maybe certain geometric configurations, or you give them the right media, liquid media, they can differentiate into systems that maybe resemble the brain or resemble some other organ. So this channel is actually, we've been working on sort of characterizing the field, where it's going. We've also had people, and these people haven't been to the meetings in a while, work on characterizing some of the main topics that we might want to follow up on. Our group here, we don't really have a wet lab. We don't have access to wet lab resources too much, but I think that some of the stuff that's going on here, there's some trends in this area that we may be able to contribute to. So this is something, if you're interested in this area, you can join this channel and look through it. If you don't have a background in biology, it's kind of like one of those things where you just have to kind of like read and you might be able to pick up some of it. I'm going to talk a little bit about them later, but just to let you know that exists. Bradenburg vehicles, we haven't posted much in here lately. There's been some talk about large language models and some really nice innovation in that area recently. There have been a couple of large language models that have been released, the SACAN, and so that was, in the Bradenburg Vehicles channel, we post things on AI. So like we have developmental AI and we have Bradenburg Vehicles, and things kind of get cross-posted between these two channels. For artificial intelligence, we have a number of different things here, like different talks. I think these are links from DevaWorm. So this is the other group I do, where we have some topics that we visit that are relevant to what's going on in this group. So this post here, this was about sort of developmental changes in learning and how you can model this using a method called simulated annealing. So simulated annealing is like where you take a piece of metal and you heat it up and you bang it with a hammer into a certain shape. And then if you want to change that shape some more, you put it back in the heat, you get it hot, you bang it so that, you get it hot so that it's pliable, you bang on the object and you can shape it. And you can keep doing this until you get the shape you want. And so that's a model that people use for optimization. And they had, in developmental psychology, there's a sort of, people are interested in this topic because it's analogous to what you see in developmental psychology, with modification of things in development. And so there's been some talk about this. There was a paper on this in SciArchive. And then we actually talked about this in parallel over in the DevaWorm group. This was this was also development, but it was developmental biology. It was a very different sort of area. This was about like cells forming shapes. So it wasn't psychology at all. But I find it that these metaphors are being used in both areas. So this is also an opportunity to bring together different applications of things in allied fields. So yeah, go through this. This is nice. If you really want to just get a sense of some of the papers and directions and trends in the literature, we have a lot of things in these channels. And I one of the problems we have in this lab is that we get these channels going and people start posting things. And when they post things in here, they tend to get lost. So they get buried. And so one of the challenges is to keep this up not keep it updated, but to synthesize. what's been
Recording
here.
has stopped.
So if we can, if people want to go through these channels and start synthesizing some of these materials, that would be great. It's definitely an area, like if you're stuck on your research, this is one place to go. Go to some of these channels and just go back through time and see what's been posted. Because a lot of this stuff is just stuff that comes out, like that week. And then it gets buried, and we don't have time to cover it in our group meetings. So, there's just a lot of stuff in here that might be useful. So that's our AI area. We also have AI, things on AI in the there's a data science channel, I believe. What is this channel? I can't remember. But there's another
It's called
channel.
data.
So it's up here, D, right? Data Science ML. So yeah, there's Data Science ML. That also has some things on AI, but it's more oriented towards like applications, interpretable machine learning, and that. So, and then of course there's Ethics Society and Tech. So that's always active, and I know a lot of you are in that. And it's very, we have a lot of. Again, this is something where if you want to really spend some time going back through this and looking at what's there and synthesizing, because sometimes you'll get these pieces of ideas that are there, and it's like no one's connecting them, but there may be really interesting connections. So that's something. And then so that's pretty much the AI content. We have our open chat forum channel, which is this channel where we get the stand-ups, but we also get different posts on different things that sort of facilitate conversation. So one of the things I found this week was this. So this is a live stream from the Active Inference Lab, and Adam Saffron gave a talk there on some of his work. And I didn't know this before, but he actually uses comics or comic strips to animate things in his work. So he's thinking about active inference, and he's thinking about action of some agent, which is the stick figure, and it's doing something here from different points of view, and he's laying it out in these comic strips. I actually find this interesting because I've done this informally for years, kind of drawing things out like this. And they call this sequential art, actually. That's the formal name for it. But you can see where it kind of is useful. You break things down into scenes and you can draw them out from different perspectives. And so, I mean, I think that's a really interesting approach. And something I've done informally. I didn't really ever think about showing people what I was doing there. But, and that's a nice little way to do things. And so, yeah, again, this is the channel where we do a lot of our sort of takeoffs for discussion. And then finally, this virtual reality neurotech channel, which is where we have different things related to VR and the metaverse and neurotechnology. I know Jesse wants to get into this, and we really haven't been able to, I haven't been able to put together a comprehensive talk on it, but there's just there's a lot of stuff in here that's kind of disjointed on its own, but needs to be, people need to go through and say, oh yeah, there's this really interesting emerging theme in what we're posting in here. So yeah, I think that's all I'm going to talk about our Slack. I just wanted to highlight what's going on and give people some more instruction on what's there. And so does anyone have any thoughts on any of that?
Only that I love looking back through the Slack.
Yeah.
Great. I also have to go now, but I'm so glad that I'm here. And I'm looking forward to hearing more about things going on with GSOC. And I've applied for NeuroMatch as a student, so that'll be fun.
Yeah.
And
Hey, Brian,
yeah.
can I ask you really quickly? Is there a night that's better for you? Is it still Thursday or Wednesday potentially good for you?
Those are both good for me. Yeah, I've just been working this Gilbert and Sullivan show in New York City. So it ends after this weekend. But I'll be free next week. I'm really looking forward to it.
Yeah, good luck with the.
Thank you.
It was mostly about like other planning for future stuff, so don't worry about anything like that. Because we may have some other people joining in the next future. So more on that in Slack. But great to see you today. And good luck with all your shows and everything.
Yeah, good luck. Yeah. See you later. So, yeah, so that's all I wanted to talk about with respect to that. Did we have anything we want? Did you want to present anything, Jesse, before we move on, or?
I don't really. I mean, I could ramble about a few things, but I don't need to. I would ask. I don't know if Sam wanted to share anything that she did with her poster, or I was also going to ask Amanda. Like, you don't have to. You can say I don't know anything yet, but I was going to ask about the Thompson book you're reading because I'm a little bit curious about that. Just like, if you have any impressions of it so far? Those are my. Those are me volunteering other people to talk, and that you can totally say no to both of those things. So, but that's what immediately came to my mind right now. Anyway,
I don't have many thoughts yet. I'd have to go back because I started it before we started the reading group. It does discuss neurophenomenology a little bit. Oh shit! Did I break up? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Sure.
Oh.
Yeah.
Discusses neurophenomenology a little bit. It talks about it in terms of isomorphisms between our like first personal experience and third personal observations of the brain. Thought that was interesting. I just started the part where he's talking about autopoiesis, which is a very interesting concept to me. And he's proposing that that's like the best definition for life is a living system is an autopoietic system. But I just started that section. It talks about phenomenology, like in philosophy, in a way that is really clear, and I think he is extracting what's relevant to the stuff that we're interested in, and he leaves behind all the stuff that just kind of sounds like nonsense. So yeah, those are my thoughts so far. I want to go back through and like integrate my notes from that with my thoughts from the reading group book.
That's great.
Yeah, no, that's I appreciate even just that little snippet is like because I was trying to pull up and I don't know where it is in my many tabs or whatever else I'm doing here, but I think it was an Evan Thompson lecture that I happened to look at myself recently, and he talks in an interesting way, and I feel like I don't. When I think of Thompson, I feel like I have different impressions of him, and none of them are very strong. So it's like I'm trying to understand what he's about more. So more about that later. But yeah, I appreciate that. I just closed. Oh, here we go. Couldn't find my. Also, bonus points for being so disappointed that the video might have cut off. Like it's definitely we feel that as part of the team. Yes, we need to complete our oral journey. So anyway, yeah. I could say some other things. I don't know if anyone else wanted to present anything first. My update or I don't really have a presentation. More just like a few other comments before we go into other stuff.
Okay.
Frontier map stuff is still happening, and I feel like I'm kind of in this sequential logjam of like stuff that is due currently, like like typical story. And I have one master's program application that's basically due this weekend, and it's just about done, which is great. And then I have some others that are upcoming too. But I have to. I'm trying to do this sort of organizational thing. I know I mentioned to Bradley a while ago, like, oh, but like starting my own lab or like starting like a collection of things off of that. I'm definitely not. I'm definitely not creating an organization that's. It's a bit more like creating a banner right now, and I feel like it's. I think having a specific banner that will let me interface with a lab in a particular way, and also interface with some of the external folks in a different way, and maybe add a different. I want to add something that's will benefit the lab and myself and other related projects in a complementary fashion, and sort of been like, what does that look like, and how does that work out? Particularly, what do I call it? It's been really tough for what to call it, because it's sort of like this process of, do you use like really precise, like, I would love to call it like the, something that's directly about aspects of like path dependency or something about cybernetics, but like it's I'm not making a research lab. I'm not making something that's focused to a specific topic. It's much more of a banner under which I can present some of the work that I am doing. Yes, but like there's a common thread between. I'm looking at my whiteboard in the distance. I can't read part of it. There's a common thread between Cognition Futures, Frontier Maps. Some general things with orthogonal, some things with plot twisters, the mentoring program, the ethics team, and some like current and developing like external stuff. And I feel like I want to be able to just have a place where I can show someone who isn't like almost like a front, just like a landing page, and if there's a concrete deliverable that any of this will be, it's a landing page and a website that kind of explains or like shows this. But like for some of the things that I'm doing organizationally and like communications with some external actors and other things like that, it's sort of creating an entity, a banner under which I can do some of that stuff. So this is a bit deep in the weeds, and I won't go into it any further. And it's kind of like lab admin / like.
Right. I know what you mean.
Like almost professional development. Yeah, Bradley knows totally, but like almost like professional development kind of stuff. And again, we're always happy to talk about that. But I don't need to steer. I don't want to take too much time in that sense. Yeah. But it's sort of like, what do you do with all that stuff, and how do you create an organization to do the things you need to do, and in ways that like reinforce the positive things that you want to help support in different areas. So that's like that's kind of excuse me, that's kind of what's happening. But specifically about Frontier Map, that has been on the back burner for a while. I have a few. I still have the drafts of like the Male Allies post and the New York Celebration Women post. I'm going to make a post that's just like maybe even a simple version of what Ankit did, but just like, hey, here's our presentation at New York Celebration of Computing, and a couple other links or ideas. Very simple, but just to put it up there, I think it'll be great. But the Frontier Map project, I still want to do the implementation in Obsidian. I've been thinking about it quite a bit. I think I have sort of the macro scope of the project, in the sense of there's a specific implementation that I want to show or have a demonstrable, something I can demo or show other people in terms of Obsidian. There's probably probably some kind of a preprint. I have not structured that fully in thinking about what to submit it to or how to do it, but like there will be a deliverable that could be cited in some form that way. But that reminds me, actually, I wanted to make my old mentoring term paper. I mentioned it a couple weeks ago about like something I wrote while I was at UAlbany. I'm going to quickly write this down. But yeah, the frontier map stuff is crystallizing, and it's still there. I'm saying it part to keep my momentum for myself, but it's still there. And also Cognition Futures. Like I really am thankful for the reading group that's happening. I'm going to touch up the website a little bit on its own to kind of give it. I've been debating about using Notion to house some of the stuff for a while, and I think even if we do use it, like it's nice. Notion is nice for accessibility in some ways, but like I think I would like to have a little bit more refinement on. I think I need to be able to show off the project a bit more in a different way, also. So I'll probably I'm considering having either a specific blog or like a Substack or something that's about what's happening there and what I want to do in that arena, just to kind of give it a little more structure too. So there's like there's specific stuff with that's still ongoing. And the only other thing on the radar that I kind of mentioned is the mentoring program. That has also been on the back burner, but as we get into May, and it's kind of this weekend is kind of the last of the spring semester stuff for me personally. So the mentoring project, the frontier maps, the Cognition Future stuff, probably ethics and society team will probably be. I don't want to say on the back burner, but I don't see any immediate like targets for that right now. So that may take a little bit of a back seat for the time being. However, and I don't know if we want to go into this now. We don't have to, Bradley, but like I think we're kind of getting close to the time of like we have the opportunity to put out more advertisements for interns or for specific projects, and even kind of just, it might even be nice to kind of do like do you want to tag along on our Google Summer of Code stuff? Because people who join us now won't be able to get funding for it, but they're absolutely welcome to do that. And that will probably be, one of the regularly scheduled columns and segments to our summer, meetings and things that we fuss about. So, maybe writing up something for that and kind of thinking about the rest of the year at this point. It's hard to believe that it's basically, 5/12 of the way, well, 4/12, I guess. But it's alarmingly close to being halfway done with the year in terms of like how I feel about things.
Yes.
And then that means it's almost fall and then it's almost winter. Like, no, it's not even summer yet. But like,
We haven't even started summer yet, so I don't know.
I know. But then it's like, there's that mindset, and I'm really good at it sometimes where it's like I'm always thinking in the next season of whatever it is, at least in like the Northeast where they have seasons. But then it's also like I still think it's April 1st too. So it's tough sometimes to have the concept of time that you want to have. Anyway, I said a whole bunch of things. I don't know if you have any comments on that.
Yeah, I have two comments. One is that I think what you're bringing up is about, kind of changing your direction in a project, and we don't talk about that too much. A lot of times people will put a project together and they'll have a very specific set of things that they want to accomplish in it. Like might start a project for a grant, and then when that's finished, it's done, and they archive the project. In our case, we've done a lot of stuff where the projects have just kind of gone on and evolved. So this is one of the things that, we have to think about over time, that the projects change, they achieve certain things, and then they kind of move on, and you can change, my philosophy on it is I wouldn't necessarily want to change the name of it, but you could change the focus quite a bit. So it's one of those things that I don't know. Like a lot of people don't really think too much about it because I think a lot of people think about it in the sense that it's either like a project is like a dissertation or it's like a funding opportunity. And I don't know, maybe they're longer term projects, of course, but they often do change focus. So, like, they're projects like the long term evolution project, where they've just spent the last 30 years evolving bacteria. And, they've answered a lot of different questions. And in that sense, it's a very broad, general project, right? You have this thing you're doing, you can do it in a number of different ways. But of course, the internal, who's there and what they're doing always changes. So, I mean, that's one way to approach it is just to be very general. Now, we've already named our projects, and sometimes the names are very specific. So they become, kind of these things that we have to maybe change the name of to make them more general, or, they drift off to some other topic. So, that's I think that's kind of normal in a lot of ways. People don't tend to just like stop one project and start another one, but there are issues with mental continuity there as well, because when you shift to a new project, you tend to forget everything that came before it. So I feel like, this is something that is almost like a unique thing to this lab, where we don't really approach projects in the typical fashion, but it's something that everyone does. Everyone, like, really, it exists on a lot of levels in academic work and in academic organizations. The other thing I wanted to point out was that, like, I like the idea of having a banner, and I think it's kind of like I don't know what that would be equivalent to. Would it be like a meta project, or would it be like organizing different efforts? Like, because people will sometimes have a bunch of projects or a bunch of groups, and they'll bring them together for some grant, right? And they'll apply for a grant, and they'll say, we're going to take different aspects of these different groups and we're going to put them together into this effort, and we're going to get it funded. And so, I mean, there's that aspect.
So,
I don't know if that's what you're thinking of, but
yeah. What I mean, first, on the comment to the previous subject, I would say there was a very real milestone in my life that I hit, I think, last year, when we were doing the like the cognition future. Last summer we did the discussion group. That's right, the discussion group deadline's due soon. Can we look at the submission document?
Yeah, we can look at
maybe?
it. Yeah.
But around that time when I was doing updates for Cognition Futures last summer, so like almost 12 months ago, I went back to the Cognition Futures website, which is still kind of out of date, really.
Yeah.
But even at that time, I looked at it, I was like, oh, I have an out of date website as an academic. And I feel like that's like
a cliche.
It's a cliche, but like as someone who's never been who's always been on the other side of looking at the websites, I'm like, what the hell? Like, what's going? Like the classic thing is like the academics that don't, like, their picture is like super old. It's like 3 to 4 or 5 decades older, and then but then I never really had the experience of. I would just go to the websites like, this kind of makes sense, or like I don't really understand this, and research is always so weird, and especially things that you aren't really established. Is like, what are you doing? Like, how do I get involved with this? It's always some labs are very good, some are not. I try with things here, and Bradly does a great job with other, like the original websites, stuff like that. But like it's just a tough process, and then it's like I just had that. There's a certain experience and knowing of like, oh, like once it's your website and you're the person who's not maintaining it the way that it could ideally be maintained, and you have to explain to someone who's like, oh yeah, like this should be this, but it's not, and I don't have time to do it. Like there's just a whole like, that would be like an awesome conference, informal icebreaker or side panel or something one day, to just have like that particular experience, because that's a very fun, lighthearted thing, and like once you get on the other side of it, it's like, like I'm that guy now, and it's like stuff. Anyway, aside from that, the banner stuff. So like in my particular case, like this, for those who don't know, like I mentioned to Bradley a while ago, like thinking about what it is. There are certain things that I want to do, and it's like, one of the biggest questions is like, what space do you want to do stuff within? And I'm very particular to like, uh, there's things that different entities and different cultures or groups have that are. I think it's important to keep the sort of inertia and cohesiveness of things in. Like if you have a group that's doing one thing, let it just do the thing, and don't try to merge and fuss them around too much. So I want, like, at least in my mind, a lot of the things that are like condition futures and frontier maps and the ethics team, all those things that I've been interested in and kind of help bring along here is like those are like these things that always are like in. I want them to be associated with the lab in a particular way of like they're part of the ethos of the lab of like they're open source, they're part of the distributed environment community we have here, and that's great. And it's like there are things I want to do that maybe don't fit into that, and it's like but they're sort of related, and I want a place where I can talk about all of them, or at least have a very simple way I can show to other people, like the mentoring program that I'm slowly developing. That's something that's going to be very cross-cutting, and it's like it's not. I can't really put it in one space, and there's certain like organizational aspects of what it is that I want to do and how to associate like partnerships or what people that want to join or do things with in terms of that project. And it's like, it's like a variety of there's like this aspect of like branding and labeling yourself on what you want to do, and the interfacing with external people stuff, and how do you do that? And so I feel like when I say there's many different ways to do this, both like in terms of in a specific research sense and like I'm not making a startup by any means, but like I've done a lot of work in the startup space. It's like, do you have a research lab? Do you have a startup or like some kind of a business entity? Do you have like an external partnership? How do you go about like grants and funding? Like these are all questions that tie into this like complicated. I'm kind of blurring the lines of like, are we talking about research? Are we talking about academia? Are we talking about like I kind of wish Angela was here, because I feel like Angela would have so much to say, because she's done with stuff with a lot of different groups and made some of her own efforts into data trust and created organizations or potential products or something like that. Or Jenny too, Jenny Liu Zhang, who is the head of the Plot Twisters group. But it's sort of like this discussion of like, I think I'm basically creating a banner organization that can say we're partners with, or we're supporting the lab in this effort, and by like oral in this effort, or I'm partnering, supporting with like Plot Twisters, or like other groups, or potentially like even some university stuff, in ways that are giving space for groups to be what they are and acting as a facilitator. Like I don't have the money or the means or like the backing to be like, I'm trying to figure out like, do I want to make like a foundation or institution or whatever, like what kind of these big structures you want to say. And like certain foundations are just literally for connecting other groups and saying, hey, we support this and we're going to try to fund this or whatever. It's like, I don't have the means to do that right now, but like in a much smaller way, there's versions of doing that and thinking about that and facilitating that. So this is a bit kind of maybe boring for most people, so I'll leave it at that.
Yeah.
But,
So yeah, why don't we?
that's kind of
Yeah, just why don't you make like a prototype or something and show it off, and yeah, we'll see. Because I want to. Yeah, I guess the conversation could go on, and it's hard to know exactly what it's going to look like until you put it together. So I would do that.
yeah. It's so much like so much of my mind the last this week in particular, because I want to have certain. You have to have things in place before you can do other things,
Right.
as we all know, and it's like it's just tough to sort it out. So absolutely, like you will be, I'm getting closer to where I feel like even picking out the name stuff. That's why I put that awkward comment like, oh, well, you did this name and like path dependency or whatever, like wayfind stuff. It's like I'm trying to figure out how to phrase stuff because it's just it's fun, but it's kind of a pain in the butt. So, yeah, there'll be more updates on that to come, and nothing's particularly going to be like. It will mostly just affect other people. Like it'll mostly be external. Like nothing's going to be changing on my end. I'm still going to be doing everything the way it's been here. I don't want to change anything in that sense because I really like how things are.
Yeah.
But I think for some of like the some external stuff.
Right.
More to say about that ahead, which is hopefully fun and exciting. But yeah, I'll leave it at that for now.
Okay.
And more to come.
I'm gonna share my screen. I want to talk about the submissions. So we just talked about that.
Yes.
So a couple updates on that. So the A-Life submissions are both rejected. And I got the email like yesterday, so it's I'm not surprised. This submission was I couldn't really find the right keywords for it, so that's sort of a bad sign. And then switching paper was a little bit outside of what they were looking for, so that's fine. What we have now are we have 2 pieces of work that we can refine and try to submit somewhere else or find homes for them. But the good thing I think is that we got it. We got some work done on that, and so the discussion group for CogSci. This is the thing I think you were thinking of. This is due Monday, so we're gonna have to work on it this weekend. Yeah. I think it's just like a abstract. I don't think there's much more to it than that.
The proposal should provide a group name list of individuals in the proposal, point of contact, and a draft description of the group's intended composition along with any planned activities. So it's basically an abstract. I think, if anything, I would just say yes, the mentor. It's basically mentoring or methodology. They're pretty. I don't think we can really merge them. It would be a little bit too awkward to put both of them. It's kind of going to be either or.
Yeah, I think so.
I'm not. Do you have any particular preferences or suggestions about which one to do yet?
I think the mentoring, because it's just flowing naturally from what we're doing right now. I think a good talk about our mentoring activities, just kind of like how we've done the meetings and how we've done the virtual interactions and how we've done maybe a plan for the future or, and this is an opportunity because they have people from the CogSci conference coming in to solicit sort of these ideas about what people would like to see. They're people who are at a certain career stage where they might benefit greatly from this sort of approach, and they might have suggestions for how to improve it. So I would definitely, really kind of play to a larger group and say, this is something we're working on for, increasing participation and, helping guiding people through their career, early stages of their career, and then, maybe open the floor to suggestions or people giving feedback. I think that'd be great.
Okay, yeah, let's do that. That is something that we have going. That's fairly concrete. There's a lot we have going on in that sense. We can sort of even like mention some of a lot of easy ways to integrate even like some of the internship stuff, professional development stuff, and also like the frontier map implementation as well as kind of like a tool or a technique to kind of build it around. And it definitely would be a part of my, like, it fits with the mentoring stuff I want to do in general too. So okay, let's say we're going to do that, and I was really hoping it wasn't Monday, but it is Monday, so
Yeah.
that's okay. That's all right. I'll throw something together probably tonight, honestly, and just have you look at it. It's like a paragraph at most.
Right.
That's what I did last, so we'll see.
Okay. Yeah. And then so then we have some other things that we, the dual inheritance for developmental agents, which I talked about last week. Then we have on the other side a venue, NeuroMatch 5. Whenever that happens, we'll be thinking about what to submit to that. And then I actually giving a mentor presentation at the Google Summer of Code Mentors Conference in June, early June. So I'm going to be preparing that, and I'm going to be that's going to be a talk at Google. So that'd be interesting to see. Just about like our approaches here in the lab and in the DevoWorm group on using Google Summer of Code as a means to get people engaged and involved in different research activities. So more on that as I get that recorded. And then I don't know if we have any other things we want to mention, put on the list, etc.
Nothing new. I feel like there are things that should be on the list, honestly, but I don't know what they are yet. So, let me check something else about the AI debate.
Oh yeah, that's coming. It's supposed to be coming up.
Next week, apparently.
I think so.
May 4th.
I haven't gotten any notification about it, but
so there's the Eventbrite page. Oh, ooh, what? Oh, let's have a look at this. I wonder if they pushed it back.
they may have. I haven't seen
Let's
any
see.
information about it.
This says
Oh.
October.
Okay, so they pushed it back again.
This is all CPA stuff. So I just looked at this. I haven't heard anything. Let's see.
Yeah, I don't know.
I always remember his name because it's very CEO billionaire.
Oh.
I don't see any updates about. I would think if they were doing it this week, it'd be like super, like, AI debate.
They'd be advertising it, exactly.
They're not one to be shy about that, which I totally respect. Because I'm that way sometimes. Yeah, I don't see much news about it, so I'm curious. I'll actually ask them. I'll make a
inquiry. Yes. Yeah, there we go.
Yeah, we'll find out.
Yeah.
That's how you do it these days in the Twitter machine. We'll see how the Elon Musk days go. But anyway,
Right.
yeah, I just thought about that, and I heard about it, and then like when he did the search for it, it doesn't seem like there's a lot going on for that right now. So okay.
So yeah, if you have anything for this summer, or you see a deadline coming up, let us know. We can put it on the list. it seems like there's like things are kind of slowing down a bit, but I don't know. Maybe there's some opportunities in different spaces. If you think there's something that the lab would be good for, I mean, if it's just something random, that's probably not useful for us. Something we can submit. And again, if people want to submit something, they want to work on collaboration, you can ask about it, and you can become a collaborator if you contribute something to the thing that's going on. So yeah, so that's what we have on submissions. I'm gonna
As far as things slow down, I would also mention that there's a lot of things that are happening. And I'm thinking a bit remiss in my lab administrator doing to say what's actually going on and what's like in development. Even in terms of cognition futures, talking about the preprint. I don't even know. It probably is too early to put like embodied intelligence 2023 on the submissions list, but we maybe could, because I think we already have an idea. Like I think actually. Oh yeah, we have in the past. We basically have done it where it's like we have an idea that we want to submit somewhere,
yeah,
and we don't have the venue yet, like kind of reverse order.
yeah.
So I think I would definitely put on the list maybe like something about methodologies in cognitive science. Like I think that would be really, even if it's not necessarily cognitive science, but like methodologies that are adjacent to what we're talking about and or like VR leaning.
Yeah,
I think that's going to be the thing that's definitely. We're looking for a target with that at some point, basically.
right. And it doesn't have to be EI 2023.
Yeah, there'll probably be things that come up sooner than that. It's just we may not exactly know what it is yet. I think also there may be, depending on what Brian wants to do and when he gets back and what his summer plans are, and also what happens with the Google Summer Code in general, there may be some. This kind of ties into what I was getting at about like, in terms of like advertising for people to come and join the lab or mention our projects. I think there's a pretty decent interest right now in interpretability and some of the AI ethics mechanical, I don't know, I guess I couldn't say like the machine learning specific aspects of ethics and some of the data stuff, interpretability and explainability. So I mean, we could absolutely get some intern person who wants to work on that specifically. There's a lot coming after a lot of the EA global stuff, the effective altruism conferences. There's a lot of people who want to talk about maybe under the lens of AI safety, which is fine, but explainability and interpretability is an increasingly interesting topic in that sense. So I think it might be good to do that. And Brian may want to go in that direction too. Depending on what happens with the Google Summer of Code, there may be some spin-offs in that way, and I think there could be. That's kind of a nice implement. That's a nice way to connecting. Obviously, is Bradly already put together, but connecting like the ethics team, the ethics lens, and implementation, or more coding-based stuff. So I think that's going to be kind of a. When I think about what's ahead, I think about that. I think about my frontier map and cognition futures stuff, which are kind of their own. They, as older professors of mine would say, they have legs and they're going to get up and move on their own. That analogy always kind of creeped me out. but they have things that are going to like they have the ability in a brain vehicle sense. They have mobilization ability to approach something. They have some movement capacity. But and then I think there's a lot of things from the interns where it's like some of the people like I know still here talking about empathy and AI. There's like options to like, oh, the interns have spent time on XYZ. and Sadena was here earlier, kind of in a similar vein. Like, if she still wants to be around and maybe has similar interests with Sam or whatever, like, there's opportunity there to flesh out a specific project as well. So it's like we have these things that we're talking about at higher levels and things that we're hoping, but like it's not really at the exclusion of other things as well. I think it's important to say that.
Yeah.
If we want to have a focus on, I'm trying to think of I think Amaris said she wanted to work on frontier map stuff actually, so she maybe do that. One of the interns who isn't here today, Amaris,
Yeah.
but we'll talk with her actually next Thursday. But you know, there's depending on what people want to do, there's opportunities to tailor some projects and also to find outlets that you may want to present at or create more deliverables for. So like, those are still for the newer folks who are watching our videos afterwards. Just I think it's important to mention that too. Like it may feel like things are. I have this big smile on my face. It's like I hear the word slowing down, but it's like in my mind it's like.
Oh no, I meant like
So
in
much.
the conference space that are
It's
coming
with
up.
submissions, yeah.
But we always have like this
and
internal, yeah.
It's really tough. It's really tough also as sort of like breaking the fourth wall moment. It's really tough to how do you communicate or even visualize what's happening in a lab space. If that comes up, this is a conversation directly the same in this lab is the same as in my day job, my professional environment where I'm a lab manager also, or a project manager kind of a thing. How do you communicate what that is internally and externally? It's a tricky thing to do because unless you're always looking at the different layers of things that are happening, it can be strange. But I think I need to tend to that,
Yeah.
and I want to make something like that for next week because I think it will help people and for the people who are finishing things up and people who may be joining. I think it's time to kind of do an update on that so they can see all these different threads that are being woven together right now. So yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, definitely.
I'm making a note of that for myself. But yeah.
All right. So I want to move to some of the papers that I have for this week, or some of the topics, maybe is a better way to put it. So I talked about brain organoids when I showed the channel. And so there are some key early papers in brain organoids that if you're interested in this area, you might find interesting. So this paper here, this was from way back in 2008. And this was the first paper where they proposed that we could make organoids of the brain. So as I said before, the organoids are these creations of cell culture where you have some stem cells or precursor cells. You transform them to differentiated cells, which means you just turn them into skin cells or brain cells or whatever. And then you can create these structures that are not, disembodied neural cells, but tissues that behave like this organ or the system that you want to mimic. So people did this with kidneys. They did this with, I think they've done it with like heart pacemakers. They've done it with other organs like, just maybe lung even. But this is brain. And so this is where the first paper where they propose that this can be done for brain. And so what they're interested in is they're interested in self-organized formation of different tissues. So, tissues aren't just like a collection of cells. They have a structure. They have a trophic structure. So, there's you look under a microscope and you can see that the tissues are, striped, where there's differences between groups of cells that form these tissues. And these different groups of cells have different trophic relationships. They're signaling each other, they have functional roles, and they have to be associated. And this is one of the benefits of having a organoid versus like something like just a bunch of neurons in a dish that are just sitting there. You can have this functional integration. So in the nervous system, for example, we have neurons, but we also have glia, we have astrocytes, we have other support cells, we have intercellular matrix. And so all those can be simulated or at least reproduced in an organoid culture. So we have these different, they talk about, some of the regional identity aspects. So in tissues, you have signaling molecules, and because it's a shape or it's a geometry or a space, you have sort of regions of that space where signals are, define some sort of identity for the cells. And so, in fact, this is critical for cells when they differentiate, is that they have a certain identity. So stem cells and precursor cells in like mammals, and this is what they're doing in this. They're working with human stem cells, they're working with mouse stem cells, and they're actually getting, figuring out ways for these cells to differentiate into the cells that you would see in a brain. So, that depends on coordinated signaling in different locations, and they're able to reproduce this. So the whole paper kind of goes through this first successful attempt at this. There's what they call corticogenesis, which means they're simulating the neocortex or the formation of the neocortex in humans and in mouse. They show their procedure here, and then they show these stains, which are antibody stains of the different signaling molecules, different genes that are expressed, and so forth. And you can see the location. So they have these structures that look sort of like an emerging brain maybe, or some sort of structured tissue. And so this was the first example of this in what they call in vitro, which means outside of the body in a dish. So this is sort of an introductory paper for this field. Then there's this paper on organoid. This is one of these sort of field finding or planning documents. This is a review article. This is from 2019, and this kind of lays out the road ahead for brain organoid research. And like I mentioned, we do a lot of things in our Slack. We kind of come up with an agenda based on what looks interesting to us. But they've actually thought about like sort of the advances and applications and challenges of this field, and with respect to brain organoids, not respect to other organs. So they talk about brain organoids being self-assembled three-dimensional aggregates generated from pluripotent stem cells, which are cells that can take on a number of fates given the signals that you provide them. And then those stem cells become precursor cells, and then they become differentiated cells like neurons. And so the cell types in these aggregates resemble what you see in the embryonic human brain. So we're trying to mimic what we see in development as well as just the tissue itself. We're trying to mimic that developmental process. So although brain organoids mimic many key features of early human brain development at molecular, cellular, structural, and functional levels, some aspects of brain development, such as the formation of distinct cortical neuronal layers, gyrification, which is how the neocortex folds, and so you see the pictures of brains that are wrinkled on the top. That's what gyrification is. And the establishment of circuitry are not fully recapitulated. In other words, these models don't do these sorts of things that you see in mature cortex. So they don't fold up, they don't have complex circuits, and they generally don't have the kind of layers that you see in mature neocortex. So it's very much, a model, and it's very much something we can learn something from, but it's not the actual cortex. It won't do things like think thoughts necessarily. It's just a model for studying some of, development and some of these other associated things. So they kind of go through the different methods, different challenges to the field. So a lot of this is, kind of focusing on guided versus unguided differentiation. So, you can guide differentiation using different factors, different chemical factors. They do a lot with like chemical media to condition the cells, and they can get different results. But those methods are still being worked out. And one of the things we mentioned in the past is that those methods aren't as uniform as they could be across labs. And so there's this issue with reproducibility. So there are all these methods that we need to sort of integrate methodologies and knowing exactly what they do into undifferentiated cells. And this is something that really hasn't been characterized as much as it could be. And so, this is kind of a table here where we have an overview of brain organoid methods. So they have all these methods that are listed, and this is the brain region modeled. So you can actually model various regions of the brain using different methods. So they have these different organoid types. So you can have a certain type of input cell that you use. And those given a protocol, you can model different regions of the brain. So you can model cerebral cortex, hypothalamus, the midbrain, and you can use this for various purposes. You can look at development specifically. You can look at disease. You can look at other types of questions related to the development of the tissue and how that might be impacted by different environmental factors. So they're different, they have the references listed here. And if you're interested in building one of these papers, I think this is, for any topic, this is a good model for going through the literature. Having the reference on the right, having some of the things, comparing between references, and then, kind of saying what the use of it is. What is the use of this? Because, for the uninitiated, it may be very hard for them to understand, for example, that you can only model certain parts of the brain, or that you need to have a guided versus an unguided approach, or that you have a different starting input cell type. And so all those things matter for what you want to do. And so going through this sort of introductory aspect, going through some of the differences between organoids and embryonic cortex, and then going into maybe some of the questions that are going to, issues like neural function and activity and cell type diversity. Those are certainly things that impact your result. So those are things you have to think about. And then some of the questions going forward. So applications, for example, you can look at human evolution. You can look at differences between different hominids that we have DNA sequences for, like the Neanderthal. And we can do screenings for different mutations and different disease states. We can look at neurodegenerative diseases like Alzheimer's. We can age the organoids and kind of get a handle on what's going on with that process. It's very nice because you can't really do these in brains. You can't do these in living brains, but you can do these in organoids and get a reasonable answer. And so, you can look at congenital brain malformations and major psychiatric disorders. So those are all application domains. And then finally, you're thinking forward and you're thinking about some of the challenges and then some of the questions for the future. And they talk about some of those. And they relate to this figure where they're kind of laying out some of the uses for this technology. So that's going over the brain organoid stuff. I thought those two references were very good to get people grounded into that area. So if you go into the brain organoids channel, those two papers might be a good starting point as well to sort of get a sense of what's going on with the literature. And then they're useful and more generally. Then there's this paper that I found recently. There's a special issue of, I can't remember what journal it is, but they asked people to, there have been debates about this, profuse debates about what kind of metaphor is good for the brain. So we talk about the brain as a computer, and I think that's one that people are both familiar with and people hate, because that analogy is, on the one hand, the brain does computation, but on the other hand, thinking of the brain as a computer is maybe short-sighted. So there are things that the brain does that aren't a computer. So the metaphor that you choose to describe the brain with is actually quite important. And so this article comes from a journal, a special issue of a journal, where they asked what kinds of metaphors can we use to describe the brain if not a computer. And so I'm not going to go through that special issue, but I'm going to tell you about one of these potential candidates, and that is the brain as a fractal antenna. So this is Jeffrey Wagman at Illinois State and Brandon Thomas at University of Wisconsin-Whitewater. And so this is brand new. This just came out. Okay, so this manuscript is part of a larger manuscript entitled In Search of an Alternative to the Computer Metaphor of the Brain. So this is a collection of, I don't know if it actually may not be a journal, it may be like a collection, but the point being is that they want to sort of find this alternative metaphor. And so the abstract reads, we argue that all computational processes require data that must be received, represented, and processed. The inherent ambiguity in these processes is incompatible with a lawful explanation of psychological phenomena. In particular, the successful performance of everyday goal-directed behaviors in organisms at all levels of taxonomic scale. We argue that as scientific devices, metaphors are best used a posteriori, which means after the fact, to generate testable hypotheses about a well-developed theory. So we develop a metaphor for mind and brain in the context of the ecological approach to perception. So this is the Gibsonian approach that we talk about a lot, and ecological psychology. So this is very different from, say, like the computational neuroscience approach, or at least the standard computational neuroscience approach, where they're really interested in computation, circuit computation. What is a circuit in the brain doing to process information, but at a very abstract level. We don't take into account percepts. We just say, here's the connectivity, here's the sort of the biophysics of it, and then let's build a model. So this is based on the ecological approach, an approach in which the successful performance of everyday behavior is a lawful process of detecting and exploiting lawful relations. In this context, the brain could be understood as a fractal antenna. That is, it could aid in the detecting and exploiting of lawful relations at multiple nested levels without generating, modifying, or interpreting such relations. So I don't know if they have a picture of a fractal antenna in the paper. But, so this is a fractal, what they call fractal organization. This is a coral, this is a bolt of lightning, and this is like the Grand Canyon. And you can see like that there's this structure that's common to all three. And it's a structure that has sort of a root here, or a main branch. And then you have these branches that come off. And they come off at different scales. So you see that there's this main set of branches, and then there's a smaller set of branches, and then yet a smaller set of branches. You can't really see it with the coral very well, but you see it with the lightning. You see this main branch, you see little branches coming off, and then branches coming off of that. And they all have this sort of similar structure, that they're branching, that they're smaller and smaller bits of the process, and that they kind of self-repeat. They're not identical. They could be identical, but they're not necessarily. But they have this structure of a large set of branches to a smaller set of branches to a smaller set of branches, and so on. And you see this in all these different natural systems. So the thinking is that, this is a universal process. Then this is an example of a fractal antenna. So this is where they build it with this fractal structure here, where you have triangles inside of triangles inside of triangles. And so these nested triangles then are able to respond to multiple frequencies of radio waves. So you can see here that you have this frequency, this base frequency, you have 2 times the base frequency, 4 times, 8 times, and 16 times. And you see that they have different wavelengths. that usually require different types of antennas. But in a fractal antenna, it can pick up all these wavelengths simultaneously. Or, you don't need to redesign the antenna to have to respond to these. So this is what they mean by a fractal antenna. It's an antenna that's designed according to these principles of fractals that respond to multiple scales, and you don't need to have a specialization. Like, for example, in a computer, you'd need to specialize. You need to have specialized programs. You have a specialized operating system, and the computer can process information in a certain way. The fractal antenna's approach, I take it, as more sort of flexible with respect to what's going on in the world. And so what empirical findings support your preferred alternative metaphor? So they talk about how we propose that the animal environment system is the level at which the phenomena of interest occurs, and the level at which lawful relations that underlie these phenomena emerge. Performing everyday goal-directed behavior requires detecting and exploiting such lawful relations, information about affordances. Furthermore, we propose that the brain might aid in the ability to do so by resonating to and amplifying such information at multiple scales simultaneously. So the brain is actually responding to things at different scales of being. You could have things happening at like the local scale, which is looking at a single individual, and then thinking about like the group, thinking about landscapes both locally, looking down at your feet, and globally, where you are in space, on the planet, in a landscape, whatever. So these are all things that sort of what your brain does, and how you're experiencing the world. And so there's also this fractality and goal-directed perceiving. So this is where you have these different types of, so they give this example from multifractal fluctuations in postural sway movements. So postural sway, I think I talked about this a while back when I talked about VR, where they have this experiment where people stand on a plate and they just measure them standing, trying to maintain their posture. And as you maintain your posture, you're actually not standing perfectly still. You're actually swaying back and forth and right and left, just to keep your balance and stay up. Your muscles are actually twitching to keep you upright. And so these postural sway movements are important to understand, like balance disorders and things like that. But you can also measure them as you stand on that force plate. You can also measure the output. You can also measure how your center of gravity shifts around, and you can actually analyze these patterns. And it turns out when you analyze these patterns, they have these fractal fluctuations. So these fluctuations at multiple scales of time, where you see where it looks like it might be just a random mess, you actually see that there are things happening on multiple scales, and they're very fine scaled movements in different directions. So understanding that structure is important, perhaps, for understanding how we keep our balance. There also is fractality and cognizing, which means things like word naming tasks and reaction times, and then in doing, so moving your hands and manipulating things in the world. So I think that's an interesting approach. And then finally, I wanted to get into these two papers about active sensation and behavior. This is a paper on sensation during active behaviors. This is something that I pulled up talking about how, these are just thinking about active perception and active behaviors. And so this is more of a dynamical systems approach to sensation and active behaviors. It's a very general paper. I'm not going to spend too much time on it, but I just wanted to bring this to people's attention. So their hypothesis here is that neural processing and sensory systems can be shaped by behavior in multiple ways, ranging from modulation of responsiveness, of sharpening or tuning, to a dynamic change of response properties or functional connectivity. So they review the recent findings in the modulation of sensory processing during active behaviors. They look at this in a number of different systems like insect vision, rodent thalamus, and rodent sensory cortices. So they kind of look across phylogeny at different model organisms They look at different sensory systems, and they find this very common sort of this sort of modulation. And so they talk about this at the circuit level, and then they kind of get into some of the open questions and future perspectives. So this is another one of these kind of field finding papers in a way, because it kind of lays out some of the challenges and some of the things that we need to think about. And then this final paper is on active sensation during orientation behavior on the Drosophila larva. So this is actually in fruit flies, and this is a model organism, of course, and larvae. So this is actually when in their developmental period. So the fruit fly Drosophila larvae demonstrate a sophisticated repertoire behavior under control of a numerically simple neural system. So they have a very simple neural system at this point in their development, but they have this nice repertoire of behavior. So these are mostly stereotyped responses, and these stereotyped responses to light and odors are very interesting because they're very easy to they're very easy to elicit and understand. More recently, the sensory receptors responsible for chemosensation, which is the sensation of chemicals, thermosensation, the sensation of temperature, and vision, have been identified. While our understanding of the molecular logic of perception has clearly progressed, little is known about the neural and computational mechanisms guiding movement in sensory gradients. So we don't really know much about like a lot of these neural mechanisms for these sort of taxis or these response to sensory inputs. So it's, if I put a chemical over in the corner of a space and I put a Drosophila larva there, the Drosophila will be attracted to it. That's chemoattractant. If it's chemorepulsive, they move away from it. So this is what they mean by these taxis or these different sensory gradients. You have a gradient of this stimulus, and the organism either moves towards it or away from it, depending on the concentration. So here we review evidence that larvae orient based on active sensation, a feature distinct from the strategies used by simpler model organisms, which means that in Drosophila, they're simpler model organisms, I guess with fewer neurons in their nervous system. They have this distinct active sensation aspect to it. Reorientation maneuvers are controlled by the spatiotemporal integration of changes in stimulus intensity. So this is again this idea that there's this gradient, that there's a concentration dependence in terms of how they're attracted or repulsed by some stimulus, and this is all driven by a form of active sensation, which is something that is very Gibsonian in its nature. And it's interesting to see this in different animal models as opposed to just seeing it in humans. But this is not something that you see much in I don't know if this is in the evolutionary psychology literature, but this is definitely the connection between these two areas. So this kind of lays out like what they're talking about here, these different taxis, which are these oriented movements. They're oriented usually towards some sort of stimulus. And then they talk more about the larva itself and what it's doing. It's sort of sensory organs here, their antennal nerves, and then the nervous system inside the larva. So they kind of go through this, and it's an interesting paper. I'm not going to go through any more of it, but I just wanted to bring your attention to these things and give you a little taste, because we could spend a lot of time on it. So it looks like Samantha had to go. Thank you for attending, Samantha. And so I asked Amanda and Jesse if they have any questions on what we covered.
Ankit's here.
Oh, hi, Ankit. Looks like you're able to make it. Did you have any questions about any of that, Ankit? As well?
Or any comments in general?
See, I thought Amanda was here twice. Yeah.
Yeah, me too.
Oh.
Hey, anything you want to share quickly, or share like updates or any questions since you're here, Ankit?